Rainy night horror stories black screen for better sleep. Welcome back. Before we begin tonight's story, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, let's begin. Some roads seem ordinary until the rain begins. This story starts on one of those roads. Ethan Brooks had been driving for nearly 6 hours. He worked as an insurance investigator, traveling across small towns to inspect abandoned properties before banks decided whether they should be demolished or restored. He preferred quiet places. Quiet places usually hid the most interesting stories. That evening, however, the rain arrived far earlier than expected. Within minutes, the highway disappeared behind thick curtains of water. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up. Lightning flashed across the sky every few seconds, briefly revealing endless pine trees stretching into darkness. His GPS suddenly lost signal. The blue navigation line froze. Then the screen went black. Ethan slowed the car. He checked his phone. No service. No internet. Nothing. He pulled onto the narrow shoulder and looked around. The only thing visible beyond the rain was a weathered wooden sign. It leaned slightly to one side. Most of the paint had peeled away. Only 3 faded letters remained. AKA the rest had vanished years ago. He couldn't even tell whether it once marked a town or something else. Another bolt of lightning lit the road. For just a second, he noticed fresh tire tracks leading off the highway. Someone had turned onto an old gravel road. With nowhere else to go, Ethan followed them. The gravel path twisted through dense forest. Branches scraped against both sides of the car. Rain hammered the roof without mercy. After several minutes, he saw lights. A small roadside motel stood hidden among the trees. Only 6 rooms. Most windows were dark. One porch light flickered weakly. A rusty sign swayed in the wind. Vacancy. The parking lot was nearly empty. Only one old pickup truck sat near the office. Ethan stepped outside. Cold rain soaked his jacket instantly. The silence surprised him. Even with heavy rain, the forest felt strangely empty. No birds, no insects, no distant traffic. Only rain. And somewhere, a slow rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded almost like someone knocking on wood. He followed the sound toward the office. The door creaked open before he reached it. An elderly woman stood inside. She looked to be in her 70s. Gray hair, long black sweater, calm eyes that never seemed to blink. "You'll be staying one night," she said. It wasn't a question. Ethan smiled politely. "If you have a room." She nodded once. "Room 4. Without asking his name, without asking for identification, she slid an old brass key across the counter. The key carried a heavy metal tag. For nothing else. "No paperwork?" Ethan asked. "We'll finish tomorrow." Her voice was quiet, almost tired. He reached for his wallet. She gently pushed his hand away. "Tomorrow." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Rain drummed against the windows. Then Ethan noticed something behind the front desk. A large wooden board covered with numbered hooks. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3, Room 4, empty. Room 5, occupied. Room 6, the hook had been removed completely. Only 2 rusty screw holes remained. He frowned. What happened to Room 6? The woman looked toward the hallway behind her. Her expression changed only slightly. "It isn't rented anymore." Before Ethan could ask another question, the lights flickered, just once. In that brief flash, he thought he saw someone standing at the far end of the hallway, tall, motionless, watching him. When the lights returned, the hallway was empty. The woman handed him the key. "Lock your door tonight." She smiled. It was the first time she had smiled. For some reason, it made Ethan wish she hadn't. Ethan stepped back into the rain, the old brass key cold in his hand. Room 4 sat at the far end of the motel, facing the forest. Every porch light except his had burned out years ago. Water dripped steadily from the roof, forming small puddles beneath the wooden walkway. The moment he unlocked the door, a musty smell drifted out. Old wood, dust, and something else, a faint scent of damp paper. The room looked untouched for decades. A narrow bed, a wooden dresser, a faded painting of a mountain lake, an old rotary telephone resting beside the bed. Everything appeared ordinary, except the clock. Its hands were frozen at 2:17. No matter how many times Ethan adjusted it, the hands slowly crept back to the same time. He laughed quietly to himself. Cheap antique. He placed his backpack beside the bed and pulled out a flashlight. Years of inspecting abandoned buildings had taught him one lesson. Always look around before settling in. The bathroom was clean. The closet was empty. Nothing unusual, until he opened the nightstand drawer. Inside rested a small leather notebook. No name, no date, only water-stained pages. Most of the writing had faded away. One sentence remained perfectly clear. If you hear knocking after midnight, don't answer. Ethan frowned. Probably a prank left by another guest. He placed the notebook back into the drawer. Outside, thunder rolled across the forest. Ethan didn't move. The whisper had come from the wall. Soft, slow, almost as if the speaker had placed their mouth against the old wooden boards. He finally came back. For several long seconds, the room remained silent. Then another sound followed. A chair scraping across a wooden floor. The problem was, there shouldn't have been another room beyond that wall. When Ethan had arrived, he had noticed the building ended beside room 4. On the other side was nothing but trees and darkness. Trying to stay calm, he grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. Cold rain soaked him immediately. The porch light buzzed overhead. He walked to the edge of the building. His heartbeat slowed. He had remembered correctly. Room 4 was the last room. Beyond it, only forest. No hidden room. No extension. Nothing. He stood there for nearly a minute, staring into the darkness. Then his flashlight flickered. A beam of light swept across the trees. For just a second, he saw what looked like another building hidden among the pines. Old, rotting. Its roof had collapsed years ago. When lightning flashed, it was gone. Only trees remained. Ethan rubbed his eyes. The storm had to be playing tricks on him. He returned to his room, locked the door, and sat on the bed. Sleep was impossible now. To distract himself, he picked up the old leather notebook again. Several pages had been stuck together by moisture. As he carefully separated them, faded handwriting slowly appeared. October 14th. The woman says room 6 was closed years ago. But every storm, someone still checks in. The next page had been torn out. Another page followed. If you find the brass key, throw it into the river before sunrise. The rest had been smeared beyond recognition. Ethan looked down at the scratched key marked with the number 6. It still rested beside the lamp. He reached for it. The metal was even colder now, almost painful to touch. Suddenly, the motel lights went out. Complete darkness. Only lightning illuminated the room every few seconds. The silence felt wrong. Even the rain had become strangely quiet. Then, footsteps. Not outside. Inside. Slow footsteps crossed the wooden floor behind him. Ethan spun around, shining his flashlight across the room. Nothing. The room was empty. The footsteps stopped. His breathing echoed loudly. Then, the closet door creaked open by itself. Just a few inches. No wind. No explanation. The flashlight beam settled on the darkness inside. Old blankets. A cracked suitcase. Nothing else. He slowly pushed the closet door closed. The moment it clicked shut, 3 loud knocks shook the front door. Knock! 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 A familiar voice spoke from outside. Sir. It was the elderly woman. I need the room 6 key. Ethan frowned. You told me room 6 wasn't being used. A long silence followed. Then she answered. It isn't. Then why do you need the key? No reply. He looked through the peephole. The walkway outside was empty. No one stood beneath the porch light. The voice came again. This time, much closer, almost beside his ear. I know you're holding it. Ethan jerked away from the door. His heart pounded. The voice hadn't come from outside. It had come from inside the room. Behind him, he turned slowly. The scratched brass key was gone. The table where he had left it was empty. Instead, a trail of wet footprints stretched across the wooden floor. They began beside the nightstand and disappeared beneath the bed. Ethan knelt carefully. His flashlight trembled in his hand. The beam slid beneath the bed. At first, nothing. Then he noticed another notebook, older than the first. Its leather cover was almost black with age. He reached for it. The moment his fingers touched the cover, someone knocked once beneath the bed. From the darkness, directly in front of his hand. Then she answered, "It isn't." "Then why do you need the key?" No reply. He looked through the peephole. The walkway outside was empty. No one stood beneath the porch light. The voice came again. This time, much closer, almost beside his ear. "I know you're holding it." Ethan jerked away from the door. His heart pounded. The voice hadn't come from outside. It had come from inside the room. Behind him, he turned slowly. The scratched brass key was gone. The table where he had left it was empty. Instead, a trail of wet footprints stretched across the wooden floor. They began beside the nightstand and disappeared beneath the bed. Ethan knelt carefully. His flashlight trembled in his hand. The beam slid beneath the bed. At first, nothing. Then he noticed another notebook, older than the first. Its leather cover was almost black with age. He reached for it. The moment his fingers touched the cover, someone knocked once beneath the bed. From the darkness, directly in front of his hand. And none of the journals contained a final page. It was as though every writer had simply stopped. Thunder exploded outside. The lights suddenly returned. Everything looked normal again. The footprints were gone. The closet door was closed. Even the room felt warmer. For a brief moment, Ethan wondered if exhaustion had caused him to imagine everything. Then he noticed something new. The notebook in his hands had become wet. Not from rain. Fresh water dripped slowly from its pages onto the floor. One drop, then another, as if it had just been pulled from a river. A folded piece of paper slipped from between the pages. It was a hand-drawn map. The motel, the gravel road, the forest, and one location marked with a small red circle. Old well just beyond the tree line. A short note had been written beneath it. "Return the key before sunrise." Another flash of lightning illuminated the room. This time Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his flashlight, pulled on his jacket, and stepped into the storm. Rain hit his face like ice. The forest path behind the motel was barely visible. Branches swayed overhead. The wind carried strange sounds through the trees. Sometimes they sounded like whispers. Other times, like people quietly calling someone's name. After several minutes of walking, Ethan found the old stone well. It stood alone in a small clearing, half covered by moss. This wooden roof had collapsed years ago. The air felt colder here, almost unnaturally cold. He looked down into the darkness. The flashlight couldn't reach the bottom. He reached into his pocket for the brass key. It wasn't there. He searched every pocket. Nothing. The key had vanished again. A slow voice drifted through the rain behind him. "You came." Ethan turned quickly. The elderly motel owner stood between the trees. She wasn't carrying an umbrella, yet her clothes were completely dry. She looked exactly as she had earlier that night. Calm, silent, watching him. "You should have left," she said softly. "I tried." "What is room 6? Ethan asked. The woman looked toward the well instead of answering. "It burned long before I was born." Ethan frowned. "But I saw 6 rooms. There were 6. She paused. "Now there are 5. Lightning flashed again. For just an instant, Ethan saw another figure standing beside her. A tall man wearing an old motel uniform. His face remained hidden in darkness. When the light disappeared, only the woman remained. She took one slow step backward. "Listen carefully. If someone asks you to open a door before sunrise, don't." She disappeared into the trees. Not by running, not by hiding. One blink, and she was simply gone. The forest fell silent. Even the rain seemed quieter now. Then Ethan heard it. A door creaking open somewhere behind him, deep within the woods, followed by 3 slow knocks. Knock, 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 and a familiar whisper. Room 6 is ready. Calm, silent, watching him. You should have left, she said softly. I tried. What is room 6? Ethan asked. The woman looked toward the well instead of answering. It burned long before I was born. Ethan frowned. But I saw 6 rooms. There were 6. She paused. Now there are 5. Lightning flashed again. For just an instant, Ethan saw another figure standing beside her. A tall man wearing an old motel uniform. His face remained hidden in darkness. When the light disappeared, only the woman remained. She took one slow step backward. Listen carefully. If someone asks you to open a door before sunrise, don't. She disappeared into the trees. Not by running, not by hiding. One blink, and she was simply gone. The forest fell silent. Even the rain seemed quieter now. Then Ethan heard it. A door creaking open somewhere behind him, deep within the woods, followed by 3 slow knocks. Knock, 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 and a familiar whisper. Room 6 is ready. Lightning flashed overhead. For a fraction of a second, the doorway was full of people. Dozens of them, standing perfectly still. None had visible faces. When darkness returned, the doorway was empty again. Ethan turned and ran. Branches whipped across his face. Mud pulled at his boots. Behind him, footsteps followed. Never faster, never slower, always the exact same distance away. He burst from the forest and reached the motel parking lot. His car sat exactly where he had left it. The engine started immediately. He didn't look back. The tires threw gravel into the rain as he sped toward the highway. Minutes later, the GPS signal returned. His phone came back to life. The battery showed 70%, as though it had never lost power. Sunrise finally broke through the clouds. The storm ended. Relieved, Ethan pulled into the first small town he found. Inside a diner, he asked an elderly waitress about the motel hidden in the forest. She looked confused. There hasn't been a motel on that road in almost 30 years. She pointed toward an old newspaper hanging on the wall. The headline read, Fire destroys Lakeside Pines Motel. 6 people missing. No bodies recovered. Ethan's heart pounded. The date matched almost exactly 30 years earlier. He drove back that afternoon. The gravel road was still there, but the motel wasn't. Only a burned concrete foundation remained. Blackened chimney stones stood among tall weeds. Nothing else. No office. No rooms. No parking lot. Only silence. As Ethan prepared to leave, something caught his eye. Half buried beneath wet leaves lay an old brass key. Its scratched metal tag reflected the afternoon sunlight. The number was unmistakable. 6. He never picked it up. He simply got back into his car, locked the doors, and drove away. Years later, Ethan refused every assignment that involved abandoned motels or remote forest roads. He never told anyone the full story. But every autumn, when heavy rain covered the highways, he would wake suddenly at exactly 2:17 a.m. Not because of thunder, not because of nightmares, but because somewhere inside his home, 3 slow knocks echoed through the silence. Knock, 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 and every single time, he found a small puddle of rainwater waiting outside his bedroom door. No footprints, no explanation, just enough water to remind him that somewhere beyond the trees, someone was still checking guests into room 6.